The NBA is often known for providing athletes with an opportunity to improve their lives by doing what they love. Many stars have managed to overcome poverty after playing in the league, with a few of them even becoming some of the wealthiest people on the planet. However, that doesn't mean everyone becomes successful after making it to the NBA. The truth is, for every LeBron James making tens of millions of dollars every year, there's a considerable number of players that get cut from rosters and have to decide whether to go into early retirement or try to make a living by playing overseas. And most of those players go unnoticed almost every time. However, there are a few cases in which a player gets the chance to prove himself after spending a few years bouncing around the league. If everything goes right, that chance will be all it takes for that player to turn things around. And that's just what happened with Christian Wood. Welcome to Courtside. Today we're taking a look at Wood's career and how the big man's bet on himself allowed him to secure a starting spot for a playoff contender. Just like most aspiring NBA players, the power forward's basketball career started at the high school level. He attended 3 different schools, eventually graduating from Findlay Prep in 2013. There he was part of a team that won an ESPN National High School Invitational Championship in 2012. However, he wasn't considered an elite player. After leaving high school and receiving mostly low ratings from the media in the recruiting process, he joined the UNLV Runnin' Rebels for 2 college seasons. During his first year, his role was limited and his production was low as a result. But he received a larger role during his sophomore year and managed to play well enough to receive consideration as a first-round selection in the 2015 draft. After declaring his eligibility, most people expected him to be selected as a late first-round pick. But unfortunately, when the draft ceremony came around, Wood's name wasn't called in either round. As an undrafted free agent, the big man made his way to that year's summer league and was subsequently signed by the Philadelphia 76ers. However, he spent most of his time in the then development league with the Sixers affiliate team, the then Delaware 87ers. Throughout the season, he was waived and reacquired by either the 76ers or the 87ers multiple times before securing a contract for the rest of the season with Philadelphia. But after the conclusion of the season, his contract wasn't renewed, making him a free agent once again. During the next season, he followed a similar pattern, this time with the Charlotte Hornets. This time around, he was able to avoid the waiving process, but he didn't receive much playing time and only made 13 appearances with the team. Instead, he was often assigned to the D-League, just like the year before. After the season's end, the Hornets didn't exercise his team option, but unfortunately, Wood couldn't find a new home in the league. As a result, he decided to sign with the Fujian Sturgeons of the Chinese Basketball Association, but he wouldn't even get to play a game in China. Before the start of the season, the Sturgeons cut him from the roster. In Wood's own words, the team told him he wasn't good enough. So once again, it looked like he was out of options to keep his dream alive. However, he didn't give up. He returned to the United States and rejoined the 87ers, where he managed to put up numbers that would usually make teams think about at least giving him a chance. And while that didn't happen immediately, he got a chance to play for the Bucks after putting a strong outing in the 2018 Summer League. Milwaukee didn't give him too many minutes either, but he managed to impress a few people along the way, including star player Giannis Antetokounmpo, who expressed his support for Wood once he learned the team cut him. Luckily, things would only start to get better for him. Wood was claimed off waivers by the New Orleans Pelicans that season to finish the season. And though he only made 8 appearances with the team, he received the most minutes of his career up until that point, and he managed to leave a good impression. After the end of the season, the Pelicans cut him too. But he wouldn't need to start over again, as the Detroit Pistons claimed him off waivers and signed him to a non-guaranteed contract to compete for the team's last roster spot. His competition would be no other than NBA veteran Joe Johnson, but that didn't stop the power forward from having an excellent performance during the preseason. In the end, the Pistons gave him that final spot, as well as a chance to play meaningful minutes. Throughout his first season with a relevant role, Wood proved he could be a successful role player by providing scoring off the bench and showing he could do a little bit of everything. And then, after the front office made a series of moves that opened up space at the front court, the big man moved into the starting lineup for the first time in his career. As a starter, he made sure the NBA would learn his name by putting up one of the most unexpected yet exciting stretches in recent memory. In 12 games, he averaged 22.3 points and 9.5 rebounds, while also displaying an excellent shooting touch from outside. He was able to bring energy to a Pistons roster that was depleted by trades and injury, while also looking like the best player on the floor from time to time. His performance during that period brought comparisons to Linsanity. And while it's probable he could have continued playing that way, the coronavirus pandemic forced the league to temporarily suspend its season, stopping Wood's breakout along the way. To make matters worse, he became infected with the virus shortly after the season's suspension, and for a moment, it looked like things would go downhill for him once again. In the end, though, he managed to recover despite going through a little scare. However, now that he was healthy, the main question for him was when he would be able to play again. Since the Pistons had a poor record, they weren't invited to the Orlando bubble, thus putting an end to Woods' breakthrough. Without any games remaining and with the offseason fast approaching, he became one of the most intriguing free agents in the open market. Considering how he played during last season, it was evident he would receive a larger contract than in previous years. However, it wasn't clear whether teams would be convinced about his ability to be a quality starter, and there were many questions regarding whether his dominant play was sustainable. Still, most people thought the Pistons would do whatever was needed to keep him on board for a few more years. but Detroit opted to retool its roster in a way that made it look like they weren't interested in bringing the talented forward back. But before Wood was able to start looking at other options, the Houston Rockets expressed their interest in him. And before long, both parties agreed to a 3-year deal that would give the big man what he had long been looking for: playing and financial stability. The move was a risky one for the Rockets, especially considering they didn't have too much cap space available. However, they were also going through a difficult situation given Harden's trade request, so they needed to make moves that would help make the team better without having to give too much in exchange. So acquiring a young player with a hidden potential that could fill a position of need made sense to the front office, even if it meant going through some risks. That way, Houston could try to convince Harden to stay, and if they failed at that, at least they would be prepared for a future without their franchise player. Still, the Rockets were facing many questions heading into the season, and one of them was whether Wood would be able to live up to expectations. The answer to that question suffered a delay as the young forward was unavailable in his team's first 3 preseason games, but he was ready to go for the final encounter, and his debut couldn't have been better. The California native started at the center position and guided the Rockets to an easy win over the San Antonio Spurs. Despite playing relatively low minutes, he led his team in scoring and finished with a double-double while doing a little bit of everything on both ends of the court. His play during that game at practices drew praise from his teammates. Eric Gordon mentioned how his game resembled that of Anthony Davis and Kristaps Porzingis, and that he could play well on both ends of the court despite his size. But even though Wood played well, it was still just a preseason game. The real test was waiting for him, and it took him no time to prove he belonged in the league. The Rockets' first regular season game came earlier than expected, given that a few players were unavailable to play in the team's opener due to COVID-related issues. As a result, Houston's first game was suspended, and the team headed into the next game knowing most of their best players wouldn't be available to play. But fortunately, Harden and Wood weren't part of that group. In his first season opener as a starter, the big man played spectacularly. He put up 31 points and 13 rebounds, showing his production at the end of last season hadn't been a fluke. But what was more surprising was the way he connected with Harden. The Beard was Houston's best player by a wide margin during that night. Part of the reason why the team was able to remain in the game despite being undermanned was because of the way he and Wood played together. 7 of Harden's game-high 17 assists went to the talented forward. And while their partnership wasn't enough to come out with a win, it showed why people in Houston should be excited about Wood. Of course, a single game doesn't guarantee he'll become a star, and thinking about how he and Harden could play together may only make things more difficult for Rockets fans. But still, there's no denying the power forward deserves to be where he is. He went from being an undrafted player who was questioned because of his work ethic and was cut from Chinese teams to a starter with a high upside that's playing for a playoff contender. All in all, we can tell that Christian's story has been one of the most inspirational we've seen in the last few years. Not many people are capable of standing up after being taken down over and over again, but he did, and now he'll be able to fulfill his dream. On top of that, he'll be playing along with some of the league's best players who've already let him know they'll help him in every way they can. So while it's still early to make any conclusions, there's a chance we may be about to see the rise of a star in Houston. But now, what are your thoughts about Woods' future? Do you think he'll be able to reach his full potential in Houston? Let us know in the comments. We hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you did, remember to like it and subscribe to our channel for more NBA content. We are Courtside.